That's all I had.
Okay. Courtney, your comments, I was having a little bit of hard time hearing them. So maybe next time when you talk, the mask off or most closer to the mic. Thanks. Any other questions there? Okay. So Terry, are you raising your hand for a question, or are you adjusting your camera? You're muted, Terry.
All the controls keep disappearing. I just want to ask. So I love the graphic, okay, with the slopes and the predictions and where we're coming in, sort of month by month, and generally we're falling in between the county and the state. I don't get a lot of value out of the next few pages of, month by month showing us in, 6 decimal points. So I'm just suggesting that maybe we could do away with that part. Is there anybody else that's enamored of those, whatever it turns out to be, 2 pages of basically saying the same thing that the line chart shows in the first page?
Mr.
For consideration.
Chair, that's an ADA requirement that we provide those pages as backup to the chart for those who can't see the chart.
Great.
Okay, Jay. All right. So the next item on the agenda, the quarterly financial statement. Again, I asked people not to make a presentation on that, but if anybody has a burning question that can't be handled offline, let me know now. I don't see any burning questions. Okay, how about Terry? You're muted again. Terry, did you have a question?
And this is frustrating. Listen, I know I sound like a broken record, but we get partial information in 2 or 3 different forms, and the only sort of master chart to go back to is the rainbow chart that gets published annually. So we get this thing, this stuff, okay, which has got budget and assigned, but it's organized by categories that I don't think the committee has any involvement in or interest in. Whether it's a capital improvement or something that the cities are doing or whatever, and then we have this thing, which we've talked about before, which is good, except it doesn't have any progress kind of numbers on it. It has, I don't know, percentages and things like that, but it does have project numbers. I thank you for that. So I guess what I would like you to consider is getting the quarterly financial report to look more like this, that shows us the value of the contracts that have been signed. If we want to know the outlays, how much has actually been paid out on that, and then at the end, this stuff with the numbers. What I think would be of more value to the committee is sort of the summary of what's the total contract value, and maybe we want to track it by category, but the total contract value, the total amount that's been expended, and then what's the future obligation. Right now, at the end of this meeting, we're going to have basically the complete expected revenue allocated to contracts. So anything moving forward is going to be a trade-off. But it's, you don't get that from looking at these 2 separate pieces of paper. So I'm just, once again, voicing my frustration that we get the information in sort of dribs and drabs. And having spent most part of a day going through this thing for the 2021 project plan, it is, it's just a lot of work. And I think it's harder than it needs to be. With that, I'll stop my rant.
Okay, and Jay, did you have your hand? Vinnie first. Vinnie, did you have your hand up?
I did. Just two things. Logan, first, can you make Chairman Windsor co-host? That way he can see the hands raised within the little pictures. That might make it easier for him. And then the second thing, I was going to recommend to Terry, Terry, maybe if you could get with staff in between this meeting and the next meeting and kind of go over the design that you have, just so that way they can mock it up and then maybe we can see it and see if it's easier. I was having a hard time kind of following along, and that could be the lack of oxygen with the mask on, but that's a joke. Sorry, but that might be a good recommendation, just to sit with staff and then see what you'd like to have. Thank you. Sorry.
Vinnie, I think that's an excellent recommendation. Jay?
Well, I echo and agree with both what Terry said and Vinnie, but and these have been problems for me too. I wanted to let you guys know though that I brought this up before outside of the meeting with staff, and I understand that actually Terry and Crystal are working on doing exactly what Terry asked for. So I think we're going to see big progress very shortly on that.
Thank you, Jay. Courtney?
I just wanted to just kind of warn everyone that there really is no perfect way to describe and lay out all of this. It's just so complicated. I think in the beginning, with our first year, it was probably easy, but look at how many projects they have to keep track of. And, the first one that you're looking at is trying to give you an idea of the financials associated with the projects, which is something that we all wanted back when we first started. And it shows the budget of the project, how much it has been assigned for the year, and then the actual spent so far on the project. So that gives you an idea of whether it's, complete. And the other one is giving you the percentage time frame of where the project is, whether it's complete in design, construction, it gives you the contract value. So, I'd be curious to see if we can do it better. I'm hoping we can, but I just caution the committee to, be kind to the staff in that respect, because it is a difficult thing to put into a chart every month and track every single project that we have going on. Because just look at them all now. We have over 100. And I just don't want to see them bogged down in trying to create a perfect graph. But that's just my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Courtney. Lorraine?
Do we have, and forgive me if I'm missing something, but do we have a percentage number that is available to the public somewhere? Percentage of projects completed, percentage of dollars expended. I keep getting asked this, of course the comment is, well, I don't see any progress in the Lagoon. And I keep talking about, well, we've really only been able to implement so much.
So we have those thermometers on the webpage. I want to also let Crystal talk about the changes that we were going to propose to that quarterly finance report for the next iteration. They've already done a mock-up. We'd certainly be happy to meet with Terry or whoever in advance and take any comments on that. But Crystal can maybe describe what we were going to propose doing differently.
How about now? Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Terry and I have been working very closely, and because of this, the financials that you see are budgeted per year, and y'all want more of an overall. So that very first page that you receive in the financials, that's a summary, that's a year summary. And Terry and I have been working on a similar sheet to what you were showing for the projects. And it's going to have an overall from the beginning of the plan for each project, completed percentage, total contract, and expenditures. Did I miss anything, Terry? So I do not have it to show you because it is not perfect yet, but we are working on it, and I believe it will be soon. Next report, we're looking at having it ready, and Terry and I will work quarterly to make sure it's updated so that when you see that table, you will get an update on the project as well as the financial history since conception.
That sounds great, Crystal. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised on the quarterly financial statement. So how about the quarterly Save Our Indian River Lagoon project performance table update? Again, we're not going to have a presentation to keep the meeting short, but if anybody has a burning question that they can't handle offline, I don't see any hands going up, so we're okay with that. Let's go down to agenda item number 6, other reports and special presentations. My Lagoon story.
Hey, John, I'm sorry. We have a legal issue that I'd like our Assistant County Attorney to explain briefly.
Okay. Thanks, Virginia.
Okay.
My name's Alex SS. I'm sitting in for Christine Valliere today. I was looking through the COC bylaws, and it looks like in order to qualify as a quorum, we need 5 voting members to be at the location physically. We currently only have 4. So with that being said, no formal action can be taken by the board. But you guys can still have a discussion and sort of communicate. It's still a public meeting, but unfortunately, no formal action can be taken at this time.
Does anybody want to rush up to the county commission chambers on Zoom?
I'm sorry, I don't recall it. How did we get to 5 as a quorum?
Right, so you would figure that just the majority of it would be enough, but Article 5, Section 4 specifically states that 5 voting members are a quorum.
Okay. Well, I guess we can go through the rest of I guess we don't have any other choice unless somebody can get there. Virginia, did you have something that you wanted to say, or are you just changing chairs?
So we were hoping for votes on 2 things: what projects to incorporate into the draft plan that we'll bring back to you at your next meeting, and then the meeting calendar for 2021. So if we get your feedback, without a vote, staff will still have a good appreciation of what it is that you want in the plan, and so that's what we'll do and bring back to you in January. I'm not quite sure how we hold the first meeting in January when you haven't voted on the calendar.
Sure, I mean, as long as everyone gets notified and it's,
Yeah.
publicized,
So,
that should be sufficient, at least for January, and then you guys.
and it's the 3rd Friday of the month, like it has been since the get-go. So I think, Mr. Chair, I apologize. None of us thought to check the bylaws to see whether a quorum was defined differently than we would have assumed. But we will take your input today, and we will run with it without a vote.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Al.
So should we go then to the My Lagoon story?
I had a question.
Oh, I got a bunch of hands that have gone up. Dennis?
Just a minute, but I'm willing to car and drive you 40 minutes to be there to work.
Okay, if you can get there, that would be great.
Hey, John, I see that Courtney has left the meeting. I wonder if she has the same idea. I don't know if anybody's heard from her. Is she zipping over to the
She's here.
government building?
My connection got interrupted.
She's here. Courtney is here. Her connection just got interrupted. She's already here in the building, Terry.
Oh, she can't. She's already one of the
Yes.
4. Oh, sorry.
And Stephanie, you had something you wanted to say?
I had a question for Virginia. So does that mean that in January, we will need to have 5 people in the building? That's my question.
Yes.
Did I leave?
Yes, Dennis, if you would.
Well, but let's be sure I'm not a voting member if Jay's here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not there, Dennis, so, but if you are willing to go there, then I will absent myself from the meeting and you can step into my place.
I'll jump in the car right now.
Thank you,
Okay?
Dennis.
No problem.
And Stephanie, did we finish with your comment? And
Yes, I'll lower my hand, sorry.
okay, and then Vinnie?
I wanted to ask the attorney real quick. Sorry about that. He was just about to leave the room and I'm bringing him back. Is there, I know Dennis is on his way here. Jay is the voting member. Is there a way that Jay can say that he would like to turn over voting rights to the alternate? That way he can still participate in the conversation?
Well, if he wants to listen in, he can do that. But as long as he's involved in the conversation, besides being just a public comment member, then I think that would create an issue with having 2 members from the same classification, I guess, being in on the meeting.
But he can participate up until the vote.
Sure.
He can participate up until the vote.
Yeah, just like a member of the public could. Yeah.
Okay. Jay, I value your comment. I hope that proves it.
Yeah, that's fine, Vinny. I mean, Dennis can chime in. I'll hang in there till Dennis gets there and then withdraw into the public.
Well, you could stay in, I would stay in until we call for a vote and then just disconnect your Zoom. Just log off the meeting.
Well, okay, if that works too.
I don't think he needs to log off of Zoom. I think we could move him from the panelist to the attendee.
That works, yeah.
Right.
We'll just need IT to help us with that.
Logan's got it, I'm sure.
How's this any different than recusing himself?
How is it any different than him recusing himself, you ask?
That was the question, yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Right.
So the bylaws state that there's the different classifications for the individuals that each person represents, right? So you only can have one person there who's a voting member. So as long as he is taking a step back, so to speak, then his backup is allowed to vote.
Yeah. Isn't that the way recusal works? I mean, when John had a conflict with some FIT stuff, for that particular vote, he recused himself, and I voted in his place.
Correct.
That, to me, seems like the precedent for this action.
Sure.
Yeah, we always have 2 members from a single area participating, and then only the primary or vote.
Exactly.
So I think we're just asking just the primary and secondary member for the purposes of the vote. But does that require that Jay actually steps off or becomes a member, or that he just allows the alternate to be the voting member?
Whatever the process is, he's not allowed to vote, I guess would be the easiest way to say it.
Yep.
So that's fine. When it comes time for a vote, I'll just leave for 5 minutes or something.
Okay. Boy, I want to thank the governor for helping us out here. It's working really well. Okay. So now should we go to the My Lagoon Story video? Agenda item 6A.
Logan, we've got a computer glitch down here that needs to be logged back on. And and hopefully
to run the video?
you were onto somebody's queuing up the video.
Hey, there, I can see Vinnie now. I can see him now. Are we good? Is that the computer glitch?
No, we
me
need somebody down here for the computer glitch.
We just need the password.
We
for
need
a-
the password.
to log into the computer, and that I can't. That I
I'll be
can't
down
help
with
with.
Here, I'll launch it. Here we go.
Probably one of the first memories of my entire life is of the lagoon and spending time there with my family, crabbing, fishing, a very active, healthy lagoon back then. And I'd have to say the most significant memory is right here at this spot on Pineda. One evening, came out with friends, and we were setting up camp for the night. We pulled up right on a fish kill. There was actively fish just coming to the surface, gasping for air. It was shocking. I really wasn't sure what I was seeing when I first came up and we saw the fish dying. I didn't know what was going on. I just thought it was peculiar. So that was really a difficult moment. And we reached out to some friends to come out and document it and to, make sure that everyone knew in the community that this isolated incident had happened. I thought it was a real privilege to have the opportunity to apply to serve on the oversight committee for the lagoon. I already felt and was slightly involved with the movements that were going on in Brevard after the huge fish kill, I believe it was 2016. I've had an opportunity to work with several educational organizations in Brevard and across the state, including the University of Florida IFISH Extension Program, the Marine Resources Council, and I've also worked with KBB and the Brevard Zoo, that's Keep Brevard Beautiful, with their litter quitter program. In all of these programs, a common thread has been lagoon literacy and lagoon-friendly practices. This is a great example of a Florida-friendly planting. This is a project that was actually put together with their environmental programs coordinator, Nick Sanzone, with a Boy Scout troop. And they came out and helped do the planting. And what is here are Florida natives and Florida-friendly plants. They require little to no maintenance. They help absorb the nutrients and pollutants before they reach our water table. So those plants are going to help mitigate any pollutants that are going to go right into the lagoon through this canal. This is actually the second planting along the canal here on DeSoto. It's an excellent example for the rest of the county, for other cities in Brevard, as well as for our homeowners to see how great it can look to make those choices. Once people realize that what they do can make a direct impact, they're excited about that. They want to be an advocate. They want to tell their neighbors what they've learned, the improvements. They want to show off their new Florida-friendly yards. They want to show off their pollinator gardens. These are great things. This community really lends a great opportunity for people to come together and work on those projects together. The biggest action that I've taken in my own life to help with the lagoon is my personal choices. While I have had the opportunity to go out and advocate and be an activist, just teaching my kids about ways that we can improve the lagoon on a larger scale, or that we can bring awareness to our friends. It's not going to happen overnight. My peers on the board, I hear them always say, this is going to take time. It took time to get us to where we are, and it's definitely going to take time to restore it to where we need to be.
Let's talk about citizen science. I'm Missy Weiss with Orca, where we use science to find real solutions for the Indian River Lagoon. Citizen science is when community members, people of all ages, of all backgrounds, come together to participate in actual science research. So for the citizen scientists, what they're able to do is participate in field sampling or lab analyses, and they're able to actually contribute and participate in actual citizen science or science research. This in turn allows them to better understand the problems plaguing the lagoon because they're engaged in finding the solution. There's also a benefit to us, or Orca, where we're acquiring more data and more information so that we can better understand these problems plaguing the lagoon. We're all polluters, whether willingly or unwillingly. And the fact is, we can all be part of the solution. When you become a citizen scientist, you not only better arm yourself with knowledge of the problems impacting the lagoon, but you become part of the solution. For more information or to become a Team Orca citizen scientist, visit our website, teamorca.org.
Okay, two great videos. Next up on the agenda, if we're ready, is the 2021 project funding requests from Terry Breeden.
Is Dennis able to hear from the phone, hear the conversation?
He's on his way here. I don't know if he's on. Is he on the call? Do we take a break?
I don't see him listed as a participant.
Yeah, we might want to take a break.
Sorry, I asked Virginia if we wanted to wait until, sorry, Karen, I know my hand is raised. I was just setting the computer up for Dennis. I was going to ask if we wanted to wait for Dennis to get here before we present on the projects, or if we want to go through. Either way.
If staff is just offering a suggestion, if you want them to pull up the revised fiscal report and look at the format of that and give us feedback while Dennis drives, we could do that.
Okay.
Sure, why not? This is, my goal was to try and minimize the time that people have to spend in the room today. So, I could go with a break, or I could go with pulling up, more information that could be handled offline. Anyway, let's go with pulling up more information.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Let me screen share with you. Where's the screen share? Oh. Okay, can everybody see the screen, the Excel sheet that's up? So what we did, this is the table in the plan that has all of the projects listed, and what they, this column here shows what their Save Our Indian River Lagoon project cost is, if it's been contracted, and then we broke it down by each fiscal year on what has actually been expended for each of those projects. So we have a cumulative spent. So I think this kind of goes towards what Terry was looking for. So we see, you can put this into percentages for each one, and you can see how much has been spent for each category as well. So here, like public education, we have a total budget of $1.125 million. 500,000 of that has been contracted, and altogether we have spent $288,000. So we have this for each of the projects currently listed, and once we get these new projects approved in the plan, they will also be added to this list. So I can go into more detail if there's anything in particular anybody wants to see.
And on the left side is the project number that matches the number that the COC has seen in each annual approval cycle. and the rows are organized by project type the way they are in the plan.
I think that looks great.
Do we need I, for one, don't need the year-by-year expenditures.
Okay, well, we can add cumulative spend, and then maybe the current year, we can break it down by quarter, if that makes sense.
This is
I
great.
think Lorraine,
I think that, if you're setting it up this way to include everything, I think having year-by-year expenditures is valuable for when you get to the assembling all this at the end instead of having to go back and reproduce it. I think having the annual expenditures from the beginning is important. So I'd leave it like it is.
We can hide those columns.
Can't you hide the rows when you
Yes.
report it?
Sure.
Right, we can hide those columns
Or
if
hide
you're
the
not
columns.
interested in that information.
That's good.
This is great. Thank you.
And when we get these, we get them as a spreadsheet. We can hide the columns too, if we're not interested in that data.
right, but that's as long as we get them as a spreadsheet. I know if they come in the agenda, we're only going to get the PDF, and we're not going to be
Yeah,
able to control them. So unless staff remembers to send them as a spreadsheet, it may just be best to standardize it, leave it the way it is on a PDF, and then just cover it up with a picture of me.
Okay, I can't quite see if anybody else has their hands up, but I know that somebody from the public's had their hand up for a while, and I need to remind them that, when it comes time for public comment, we'll address questions from the participants, but not at this time. Charlie?
Yeah, I was just going to ask if Vinnie can send an autograph picture for those, so we cover up those column rows. But really, I think if you do send it as a spreadsheet, the user can hide whatever rows they don't want to look at. It'd be really easy, and then you can have all the data. Pretty much what you said, John.
Okay. Anybody else?
John, I've got my hand up, I think.
Jay, go ahead.
Yes, picking up on what Charlie just said, I think at a minimum, Terry, if you could send this out to the committee members, this is your current draft form, I'm assuming. Send it out to us in a Excel format and invite comment. I think it'd probably be better served if we all had a chance to have some input, but do it outside the context of this meeting. I, for one, would like to see this presented in the order of project numbers, just because, first of all, that kind of follows a chronological time frame, and also it just allows you to cross-reference with other documents a lot easier. But as I said, I think if you were able to send this out in an Excel format to everybody, then we could give you input, and you could assemble all that input and take it into consideration. That's all I've got, John.
Okay, thank you. All right. Again, if we get it as a spreadsheet, you can sort it any way you want. Anybody else with questions?
Could I just ask what this is? What does this replace? Does it replace this format?
Sorry, I can't see what.
Hello? See that?
I'm just having trouble getting you on my screen. I can only see 4 insets here. I got to get back to another view. Better. Thank you. So, Terry, you're asking.
I assume this is designed to replace the performance table, not the what do we call this other thing? Not the financial statement.
Crystal's coming back up, but we were thinking it was going to replace the quarterly financial report, the expenditures portion. You would still get the same revenues, but the detailed expenditures would be replaced with this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Correct. What Virginia said, we would, you would get the very first page, which is the summary, which is what you were asking, Mr. Castillo. And then all the detailed following pages would not be there because we were going to incorporate this with the table that you just saw.
Yeah, great. I'm with Jay. Send it out and let's have everyone have a chance to kind of cogitate on it. But good work. I mean, moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, I think that we've finished up any comment on that. Should we take a break and wait for Dennis, or should we just move on with Terry starting the description of the project funding request?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend a potty
John,
break.
just so you know, this is Dennis. I'm in the car driving in the meeting.
Oh, okay. Great.
I'm 1 mile away. I'm 1 mile away from the Vieira exit, and I will be there momentarily.
Okay, thank you. I think then we'll go ahead and let Terry start giving an overview here of where we're going. So Terry, and that's Terry Breeden. We need to remember there's two Terrys on the meeting. There's a T-E-R-R-I and a T-E-R-R-Y. And T-E-R-R-I is our project coordinator here. So Terry?
I'm happy to be Terrence for purposes of the committee.
All right.
Mr. Chair, real quick, I just didn't know if we wanted to take maybe a restroom break now, because once we dive into this, it might get kind of long. And since we're waiting, since Dennis is on his way here, but that's your call.
Okay. But 10 minutes? I got 9:22 on my computer clock. How about 9:32? We get back together.
Sounds
Take
great.
a break?
And then I was going to say too, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Virginia, I don't know if we'll need to redo all the votes we already did to approve the minutes and the agenda, because we officially didn't have a quorum. So once Dennis gets here, we may need to revisit all those votes.
Great. Okay. Thank you. See you in 10 minutes.
Not unmuted.
All right, John, I think we're live, and we need to go back and vote on the agenda and the minutes and the virtual votes again.
1, 2.
Sorry, you're going to have yourself muted on here. You are, so you're good.
Okay.
Oh, okay, and are we back on the air now?
I appear to be here.
Yeah, I believe we're back on the air.
Okay. And so, and apologies to folks who've just joined us, but thank you, Dennis, for making the mad dash to the government center to make sure that we have the quorum necessary for voting. And just before we took a break, Vinnie suggested we go back to the approval of the agenda, and the very first item before the approval of the agenda, or during the approval of the agenda, was a vote about allowing all the COC members who are eligible on Zoom and in the chamber to vote. And so I believe Stephanie made that motion. Stephanie, can we just say that we remake that motion?
Yes. I remake that motion. I move that we accept the votes under extenuating circumstances of anyone not present in the room.
Okay, and I think second on that was, who seconded that?
That was Lorraine.
Okay, Lorraine,
Yes.
Yes, I
you
second it.
that?
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor, the folks in the room have to vote on that?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Up discussion, okay.
Go ahead, Jay.
Hold it, Jay wants to discuss. Jay, I'm not sure that because we're not officially recognized as being part of this meeting, I'll let you go ahead and discuss, but I'm not sure you're supposed to. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, that's the wrong word for it. I just wanted to have it noted in the records that I have officially withdrawn from this meeting as of the break we just took. I will not be participating any further except as a public observer.
Okay,
That's
thank
all.
you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. And so the vote was in progress, and I think I heard everybody say yay, that they were all in favor. And so that motion passes unanimously, which opens it back up to everybody else in the meeting again. And we'll need to go back through. Can I, to facilitate things, can I make one motion can I have somebody make one motion to reapprove the agenda, the minutes of the meeting?
So moved. This is
Is that
Lorraine.
okay? Lorraine's moved that in second.
Second.
Second, Vinnie. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. So we've reapproved all those, and I'm not sure that anything else that we voted on anything else. We should be down to item 6C of the 2021 project funding request from Terry. Terry, you want to take it over?
I think Charlie had a question. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Charlie, got a question, comment?
Yeah, so on the motion for the quorum, I think we approved it for this meeting only, so we're either going to have to make that a standard agenda item, or if we can vote on it another time, make it in perpetuity.
Since it's extenuating circumstances, I'm not sure that we could do it in perpetuity because it's for a specific circumstance, but I do think putting it on the agenda for now might be a good idea. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So that'll be the first item on the next agenda for January. Okay. Jay, did you still have a question, or did that left from before?
That was left from before, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Terry Breeden, are you ready?
I am ready. Okay. So
okay, take it away.
All right. This year we had a total of 25 applications. One was withdrawn due to the supplemental material not being complete. So we've had 3 vegetation harvesting, 7 stormwater, 4 living shoreline plantings, 5 oysters, and 5 septic removals. projects that were submitted. 2 of those are changes from previously approved projects. One was the MICO septic to sewer. That project has changed, so it's actually asking for a reduction in approved funds. And then the Ray Bullard stormwater project was asking for an increase in funds because they've expanded the project to include more nutrient removal. So you've probably seen the project table. I can share that really quick. So with this, we have a total of $3,249,330 that in requested projects based off of the changes from including the MICO and the Ray Bullard stormwater project. So I know we are going to discuss the amount of funding that's available. We also have a the second table is other projects that have been brought up by the committee over the past year, including the oyster gardening, the clam aquaculture pilot project, and some of the potential rib and spray field projects that are available, that are also up for discussion. So with that, I think Matt's going to have a presentation on the ribs and spray fields.
Good morning. Can you all
I'm
hear
sorry,
me?
I have my hand up, but it's not being recognized. Terry, do you have the project sheets for those 10 projects that are reconsidered from previous actions? They weren't included in the package.
I'll address that.
I'm sorry. So there's not a formal submission for these 10 additional ones?
Correct. The 10 additional ones are based on prior direction from the committee, and we would normally bring these back to you in the draft plan, but because they had fiscal implications and because we have a revenue shortfall, I thought it was better to bring them to you now with all the new applications as well. So there are not forms for those projects.
So where did the details come from for the eligible tax share and amount of nitrogen being removed and so on? That seems pretty detailed.
That's the next presentation by Matt Madalato.
Okay.
Okay, you want to hold off there, Terry, and let's let Matt get going. Hey, Matt, go ahead.
Can y'all hear me? Nope.
Yes, sir.
And can y'all see that? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the package plants and the updates to the 2021 plan based on the 2020 nutrient removal data coming from these plants. So real quick, I didn't know what a package plant was before I got here, so I'm just going to show y'all what a package plant kind of is. They are mini wastewater treatment plants that are put in to smaller neighborhoods in lieu of septic systems or in lieu of sewer systems because either they're too far from a bigger wastewater treatment facility or too expensive to do it, or they just kind of built these really quickly and they just didn't have time to plan that kind of infrastructure, or it was just too expensive and they're on a budget. So anyway, they are just mini wastewater treatment plants that aim to remove as much of the nutrient pollution and pathogens as possible. There's a couple types of tertiary treatment that we kind of classify them into. They're either ribs or spray fields in this area. And so spray fields are kind of just what they sound like. The water that's treated primary first through the with the bacteria and the sedimentation and the settling and all that, and then they just spray the water out onto a big field, kind of like we use our reclaimed water, similar. They're spraying this, halfway treated water out, where the idea is that it'll percolate down, get used up by plants, and treated by biological, geochemical forces in the ground before it gets down to the groundwater and out into the environment. So hopefully it's treated nicely and before it gets out there. And then we also have ribs. What are ribs? Not these. It is actually this very basic diagram. It stands for rapid infiltration basins. You have, similar to a spray field, you have the water coming down into an area, but instead of a big wide area, you have it just into a depression. And then sometimes that depression, they'll dig out the bottom, add material to help the water percolate through. Anyway, the idea is that it percolates down through the groundwater, or down through the ground into the groundwater, and it gets treated along the way, similar to like a septic drain field would. So here's one of these rapid infiltration basins. This is the Oak Point Mobile Home Park. You can see the pond here in the center of the yellow circle. That's the actual basin itself. To the southwest, you can see that's the treatment area. So you have the tanks and the pumps and that primary treatment part. So this you can see it's pretty close to the lagoon. This picture's from 2007, and then here's 10 years later. It looks like it's a little green. Maybe it's just duckweed. Maybe it's a hot year and there's a bloom. I'm not sure, but it's right next to the lagoon there. And then here's a picture from land. You can note that there's a very narrow berm separating this, partially treated water from the lagoon. So what can we do to fix these, or to help these? So what we like to do ideally is connect these to sewer where it's possible. So here are the 2021 updates to the plan, and these numbers, you can see we highlighted the most cost-effective ones here. This is per pound of nitrogen removed, and then this number is calculated based on the cost to connect to sewer, and divided by the number of pounds that we could reduce by changing this to sewer. And that TN load reduction is based on the number of units in that area, as well as that TN load reduction is based on their nutrient pollution that they submit to FDEP quarterly. So they sample their effluent, and it gets submitted to DEP, and DEP posts those. So we look at those, we average them out, and then we can multiply that by the flow per month, so we can kind of figure out how much is getting into the spray field or the basin. So yeah, these are expensive projects. Not too many of them are super cost effective. You have $2,000 a pound, $10,000 a pound, real expensive stuff, just because the nature of sewer projects they're very expensive. So what else can we do? If we can only get a few of these hooked to sewer because of the cost prohibition, we could upgrade the ribs and spray fields themselves. So you can see that we have a lot more cost-effective options here, from a couple $100 a pound, to $1,000 a pound. The costs are way cheaper, 20, 30,000. Some are, up to $500,000, but we can get a lot more done with the money available. And again, these are based on, we moved some of these around from last year's plan because of the updated water quality sampling results. Some of them were higher, some of them were lower. They may have been higher because we had a bit of a drought in the spring, which increased the concentrations of TN. But these are averaged over, 5+ years. And I think that's about it. Oh, sorry. So while we were looking at this, we also looked at public wastewater treatment facilities, and these did not change much from last year. The same two, Port St. John and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, both are cost effective. This Barefoot Bay one, you can see the cost per pound is extraordinarily high, and that's estimated cost was because this spray field is a very large spray field and would require extensive work to upgrade. That's it.
Okay, so are we going back to, obviously, hands up. Charlie, question?
Yeah, hey, man, great presentation. I love the picture of the Florida mountains that you had. And I was curious, are all those package plants in compliance with their wastewater discharge permit?
Can you hear me? That would be a question that we would probably have to look at DEP data to find out.
And the reason I ask is that, they have some compliance issues. I don't want to be spending our money to get the owners off the hook, something they should already be doing.
Okay, Vinnie?
Well, I thought, Virginia, we're going to answer that question.
So often these facilities have old permits and old regulatory standards, and in order to remain in compliance, they achieve a much lower % reduction than our advanced treatment plants, centralized advanced treatment plants. When this was discussed with the committee before, I remember Todd requested that staff take a much harder look at package plants, knowing the difference in treatment that they typically provide compared to a central wastewater treatment plant. And so that's why Matt has gone through 5 years of DEP quarterly reports to look at the actual % concentration at these facilities. So there may be some of them with compliance issues. They can address those compliance issues for a lot less than the cost to get them connected to sewer or to upgrade their ribs or spray fields with BAM the way we would with a septic upgrade or a stormwater project.
Okay, Vinnie?
Thank you. Yeah. First, just real quick, I don't know if everyone else. I was just aghast at seeing how close that field was to the lagoon. I mean, seriously. I didn't know, and this probably isn't for this committee, but I don't know if that is still allowed. Probably not in current code. But I think that beyond us trying to work on it, I hope somebody somewhere is going to make sure that that doesn't happen that close to the lagoon, or there are stricter guidelines, which you were talking about. And that was my question. So to upgrade a rib or a spray field, we're talking about BAM. Is that the only? Is that the option that we're talking about?
That was the basis of our cost estimates for the upgrades.
So then you would just dig up the ground, put BAM underneath, and then put it back. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm just trying to get educated too, because Matt, you're not alone. I thought a packaging plant we were selling stuff, and the first time you remember, I was like, what are we selling? So thank you.
Okay, Courtney.
And my questions were similar to Vinnie's. Is what are the current regulations now for these? Is it are they allowed still, or is it what is the?
Todd may have better answers than we do. Yes, they are allowed. I don't know what the current standards are that they would have to meet.
Okay.
And I'm going to jump over Dennis for a second and go to Todd because maybe he can answer that question directly. Todd?
I'll try. The answer is kind of it depends. It does depend on location and a lot of other different things. So, and just as a clarification, that in general, ribs and the spray fields are not really intended for much in the way of treatment. It's more of just the method of disposing of the water after it's been treated. So the standards are typically measured at the outfall of the plant before those locations. There are some new regulations that are changing that are starting to look at, criteria leaving the property. And so, and Virginia's right, newer permits are more likely to have those perimeter type measurements than some of the old permits. That was actually a question I had for Virginia's, with the new Senate Bill 712. I know it eliminates discharges to the lagoon from direct discharges. Do you know if it was it addressing anything? Did it adopt anything in terms of adopting advanced wastewater treatment, or is that covered in the BMAP for the lagoon at all?
I believe Senate Bill 712 directs that it be addressed in the BMAPs, and the DEP just presented the draft BMAPs, the next 5-year iteration of draft BMAPs last Friday. I know there are some new standards proposed in there for how to address Senate Bill 712, but I have not had a chance to read those reports yet.
Yeah, so across the state, Senate Bill 712, which was, Senator Mayfield, who came and spoke to us, was the author and primary advocate of that bill, and it does implement what are a lot of positive changes in terms of helping wastewater utilities and the environment live in harmony and work together. So part of what it does in other areas, and in the area that I work, is it starts to identify strengthening requirements for wastewater discharges in BMAP areas to reduce those nutrient contributions to the lagoon. So regardless of whether that's in effect today or not, I think that is going to be, regardless of what we do, that's going to be one of the best places to make sure that the county's actively engaged is in review of that BMAP to ensure that those requirements are appropriate for the objectives that we're trying to reach, which are minimizing those nutrient discharges into the lagoon. But these package plants and smaller plants are, they can actually treat. It's really less about their size, and it's just that they can treat to the same level as a full plant. It just ends up being very expensive for their scale. I do think that it's a place that is worth us investing. We obviously need to make our financial choices. In many cases, and to kind of Vinnie's question, in many cases, there are a lot of these plants that do have compliance issues over time. You can't just unilaterally say that's the case, but because there are some that are operated very well, but often it is, there are compliance concerns with those. So that would be my two recommendations, is that the county and through Virginia's group needs to be actively engaged in that BMAP process to make sure the regulations are working in concert with the work that we're trying to do. But I do think it's very prudent to continue to get package plants onto central sewer, and some of the improvements that are coming through and requirements that are coming through Senate Bill 712 are very well aligned with the work that we're trying to do of requiring utilities to do additional asset management work and other things that are all going to work to the same objective.
And I'll go ahead and mention that the draft BMAPs, as Virginia said, were recently released. They're out right now for review, and so anybody can take a look at them. And I'm sure DEP is willing to listen to any comments about the BMAPs for our area. The 3 of them that have been posted this week. Dennis?
Yeah, from a non-technical standpoint, looking at that list, it looked like a tremendous amount of very, very old mobile home parks, and they're all very close to the lagoon. I mean, real close. I mean, we saw that one. It seems to me that unless you're transporting far away for the spray fields, it's still going to go into the groundwater and end up in the lagoon, similar to a septic system. And looking at the list, I mean, I recognize a bunch of them as being close to the lagoon, and they're old because that's where everybody cited them way back when. I think it's really important for us to look at this for sure. It looks to me like we can get rid of a tremendous number of kind of in between a septic and a package plant. The old package plants are kind of in between a septic and a full treatment system. This is a real easy way to get rid of a bunch of it. The other side of it is, because those plants are so old, I guarantee you they've got some transmission leaks within the system from the trailer to the package plant. So that's something else that we've got to deal with.
Okay, thank you. David?
Wanted to ask Virginia, or maybe somebody else can answer this, but on these mobile home parks that Dennis just referenced, when they change ownership hands, are there any obligations for them to improve their infrastructure at that time, or are there any other, a timeline criteria for them to upgrade their systems, or, is that something we can factor into our decision making, and to know maybe what skin they're going to have in the game?
So I think the most recent change in the rules that would affect them is this new rules adopted by the legislature in Senate Bill 712 that says that these will be addressed through the basin management action plans. So now it's up to DEP to figure out how to incorporate language into basin management action plans. And then, there would be some implementation time frame. What was just proposed is a 5-year window to achieve some percent reduction. But it's a draft plan out for public comment.
But Brevard County doesn't have anything in place for transfer of ownership on these mobile home parks. I know they tend to, historically, a buyer comes in, throws a scant amount of money, to keep the facilities going, and they hold on to it for a while of time, and then they sell it to the next guy. And it seems like a transition of ownership would be a time to expect the property owner, just like we expect of everybody else, to deal with their own infrastructure. So, just seems logical to me that that'd be, something to consider. Not that we have purview over that, but.
So they have a state permit. Okay. They have a state permit in place to operate the way they are operating. So I don't know what authority the county would have to interfere with a state permitted activity.
I gotcha.
Okay, I got hands up. Vinnie, Charlie, Todd, then Dennis. So Vinnie.
Yes, sorry for talking twice. Just for me, I know we're going to talk about the projects and the project plan, and so I'd like to kind of get an idea for this one, how I'm going to vote for this one now before we complicate it. And so I know we're talking about upgrading the ribs and the spray field. And Todd, I know you've got your hand raised as well, but it sounds like doing that, we can do it on the cheap, and that makes sense. But if we were to convert one to sewer, to connect it, is the cost of that, just converting one, would we be keeping more nitrogen from the lagoon than doing the BAM? In other words, is there a way where we can puzzle this in place where we're actually connecting one? Because eventually I think these all need to be connected. Because even if we treat, or the treatment plants need to be upgraded, Todd, as you were saying, and because of the scale, it just doesn't make sense for them to spend the money on and they're not going to. So was that looked at, Virginia? Just asking, was it looked at the cost to connect any of them versus just doing the BAM? And I know we're trying to spend pennies here to get the most out we can. But to me, it just makes sense to look at that to see if we can just knock one off the list of a treatment plant.
So what Matt showed you was the tables of where we calculated the cost effectiveness for connecting to sewer. We did that first. And then for the ones where it's not cost effective to connect to sewer, we looked at, well, is there something else we could do? Would it be cost effective to treat with BAM? So in terms of load reduction for dollars spent, the BAM is a better deal for those facilities. But if you would rather spend more money and get them connected to, a 21st century tertiary central sewer, I couldn't argue with that.
Hey, Charlie Venuto?
Yeah, so I've got 2 points then. So the project, the one that kind of got everybody's attention, that's the Oak Point facility. And right now, I think that project says they're going to, we would connect it. I mean, that to sewer, that was, I think, the proposal. The other question that I have is that with property values increasing in Brevard County and property that's on Lagoon is probably pretty valuable, I just wonder, would these mobile home sites end up being bought out and converted to development in some other, and then maybe they would connect those developments to the sewer. So and I know it's none of us are clairvoyant, but I think it's something to be considered when we make our decision.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, just 2 comments. One, going back to David, Virginia's accurate. Those, in general, those are going to be governed through their DEP operating permit. That also governs the collection system leading up to that plant. I think one thing for Virginia to note is it's going to be important to look at both the BMAPs and that rule to see whether these fall underneath the threshold of any requirements, because a lot of those rules have a minimum flow. And a lot of times it's like 100,000 gallons a day. And so these particular systems may fall under those thresholds and not be subject to a lot of the requirements. So we need to just take a look at how we engage, because in case that they are exempted from some of those rules. So that's one important piece. The other thing is I would highly caution us on and review very closely any project that's considering BAM. Candidly, that didn't look like a rapid infiltration basin to me. That looked more like a effluent storage lagoon in that picture. Rapid infiltration basins are used. They're typically they're not intended to be full and ponded like that. I suspect that's a discharge lagoon that's actually discharging to then the Indian River Lagoon. Even where there are rapid infiltration basins in place, particularly in areas like ours where there's very, very high water table, they are notorious for being ineffective as far as infiltrating. So a lot of times there could be discharges. So we need to be very, very cautious about presuming that a BAM type solution in a rib would work, and make sure that we've looked closely to know that that rib is working. Because if the rib's not working today, adding BAM is not going to make it work. It might add some treatment, but it's not going to get it functional. And in high water table situations, the rib's function can be marginal. So we just really need to look closely before we assume that we can make modifications. And I think you're going to find on the spray field situation, there is no option to make that remove nutrients other than going upstream into the plant and changing the plant to an advanced treatment plant, because over that large of an area, it's just not viable to have a solution like that. It's really intended as a liquid disposal method rather than a treatment method at that point. So just be very cautious on treating at that very end, because I'm skeptical of that.
Hey, Lorraine?
Okay, Charlie actually asked my question, but I was just concerned about the transient nature of mobile home parks. And even looking at 30 years ago, I mean, I think there are a lot less of them now in Brevard County overall, and with the property values going up. So just reiterating his point.
Okay, Terry Casto?
Yeah, so back to my original question about the backup for these 10 additional projects. I was having trouble keeping track, correlating between what's in our package and what Matt was presenting, but I think Summit Cove and maybe Lighthouse Cove were on his list with, it looked like it indicated no data supplied, and yet we've got, you know, forecasts of costs and savings and so on. So again, I'm just questioning what is the backup for the 10 additional projects that we're reconsidering here?
Okay. Dennis?
Yes, sir. I wanted to just comment on what Todd, no, it wasn't Todd, Charlie, I think, said about the converting these things because of high property values and that sort of thing. There's a very, very difficult to take a mobile home park with 140 residents in it and convert it into anything else. The cost of removing that resident and asking them to leave is very expensive, and it's very difficult. There's some state law on that. So that's why you'll see those things not changing hands. Well, they'll change hands as mobile home parks, but you aren't going to get a condo built on it super easy because of the complete, utter chaos it causes. And developers just aren't willing to do that. So that's just my input.
Okay, thank you. Vinnie?
So I was just going to, Dennis took exactly what I said. I don't know if you all remember, maybe during the boom, the housing boom, there was a mobile home park in Miami where the investor, someone came in, they were going to convert to a condo, and they paid every resident who lived there $1 million. Like, they paid them $1 million because to get the property. And so there are state regulations, 923, that protect people that live in these parks. So and not only that, but they are seen as a cash cow because they're very low overhead. And if you get people in there paying rent, they're responsible for their homes, but nothing else. And so I understand everybody's thought and the way that everything else moves in the county. But I think a lot of the mobile home parks will change hands, but they will stay. And if they are grandfathered in with lower DEP levels of requirements, I'm not certain that's something that we can expect to take care of itself, is my point.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. And at this point, is there an action that we need to take, or should we move on to let Virginia give us the latest revenue projections?
Sorry, I think we can move on. I just want to point out that we do have speaker cards for the engineer for Oak Point if you want more information about that before you vote. So,
Okay, thank you.
let me try to share my PowerPoint. Okay. So this does not exactly match the advanced copy that we mailed out to you. Made a few adjustments and added some more information. But I'm going to talk about the reduction in anticipated revenues, add in some information on potential for reduction in inflation costs for our projects. Of course, we have existing projects in the plan, even if we have not spent dollars on those projects yet. There is some, community investment in those projects. And just as an example, If an area was previously approved in the plan as an area that was going to be converted from septic to sewer, those homeowners are not eligible for septic upgrades. And so they contact Matt and ask, hey, I want to upgrade my septic. And Matt has to say, no, we can't help you with that because there are dollars already allocated for your home to connect to sewer. And yes, it's in year 7 of the plan, so you're going to have to wait a little while, but it's coming. So if we were to, if the response to reduced revenues was to take funding away from those projects, I just want you to be aware that there's going to be angst, even if we have not spent a single dollar on designing those projects yet. All right, then we'll go back through these new project opportunities, both the ones from the community and the ones presented by Matt, and 2 more that have come to the committee in the past, the oyster gardening and the clam aquaculture, and then an approach for balancing the budget. So this is for calendar year 2020. The numbers that are not highlighted are actual revenues. They should match up with the financial chart and graph that you saw at the beginning of the meeting. The ones highlighted in yellow are projections. And historically, we have received on the order of $3.4, $3.5 million a month, which is what you saw in January and February. Then March looks like a really high month because, as discussed in previous meetings, we get these quarterly adjustments for items that were purchased outside the county but delivered within the county. And then April, during the lockdown, you see a significant reduction in revenues, but then things bounced back really strongly or fairly strongly in May, and in June that quarterly adjustment was the largest that we've received in the history of the tax. And so July came in at 3.4. We did all our projections. We came up with how we might balance the plan. Everything was looking great, which is what I reported at the last meeting. And then the August revenue came in at just over $3 million, at which point we went into a frenzy of recalculating. And I contacted the director of the budget office, our contact in finance, a few other folks who deal with finances for the county, and said, what do you think I should do for projecting these revenues going forward? And so that team of folks agreed that we should project growth at 1.4% for the rest of the year 2020. So that's what those numbers in yellow are based on, 1.4% growth for the rest of this year. And if we do that, then our revenue collections for 2020 would be on the order of $45 million. So the next slide takes all of those numbers that were on the previous slide and shifts them to the left, and then adds a new table to the right showing the 10-year projections for the life of this tax. So 2017, 2018, and 2019 are based on actual collections. 2020 is that $45 million that is a combination of actuals and projections for the remaining 4 months of the year. I know it's already November, but we don't get those collections from the state until several months later. So we don't have September, October, November, December yet. And then for projecting the remaining years of the tax, that same group of financial advisors recommended using 2% growth. So a slow economy, a conservative growth, and going forward. And when you do that, you get a 10-year projection of $475 million. The prior projection used in the 2020 plan was $494 million. So it's $19 million less than previously projected. So that's just looking at the revenue side. But then looking at the cost side, we have built into the plan an inflationary factor. And the inflationary factor that currently built into the plan is 3.25%. This headline I pulled off CNN last night. Mortgage rates have never been this low. The current U.S. inflation rate for the month of, reported for the month of November 2020, based on the 12-month, trailing 12-month, is 1.18%. If that's the national standard, this little graph in the bottom right-hand corner shows you the national standard versus the South region. And so the South region is a little lower than the nation. I found some numbers for Orlando and Tampa. The first blue bars in the bottom right corner chart, that's for all of the CPI for all items. So 1.3 is the South region, 1.4 is the United States. The numbers I found for Orlando and Tampa were 1.1, 1.2. So we are even lower probably than the South region rate. The top part is a graph of how the monthly inflation has changed over the last decade. And below that is a table with the actual values. So you can see that in 2017, we had an inflation rate of a peak of 2.74. Sometime in 2018, we had a peak of 2.95. So when we incorporated that 3.25% into the plan a couple years ago, we were conservatively estimating what might happen, based on these peaks that we had seen in the last couple years. Obviously, what we have now is considerably less than that. So we thought through several options, and if we keep our 5% contingency and reduce the inflation from 3.25 down to 2.5, we get an amount, 61.8 million, that is very similar to what was in the PowerPoint that I sent you. So whether we call that 15% contingency or whether we call it a combination of 5% contingency plus 2.5% inflation, it's very similar value. And so what I did was subtract that out of the 475 million available, take out our 10 million for respond to come up with the project budget. If we're going to collect 475 million and we want to set aside an amount for contingency and inflation and set aside 10 million, a million a year for measuring performance, how much do we have available for projects? And then I looked at what's in the adopted 2020 plan and compared that, and we get an unallocated revenue of $4.7 million. So then the next slides go through, how you might allocate that $4.7 million. Obviously, you could adjust any of these, but a few months ago, the county commission asked the committee to consider shifting the cost of oyster gardening from stormwater fee to the half-cent sales tax. The committee voted in agreement to do that for 2 years, so at $150 a year, that's $300,000. We also had a presentation on the super clam project and talked about a clam farming incentive as a pilot project at an amount of $60,000 for next year. And then the rest of the slide is about connecting some of these worst or most cost-effective package plant connections to sewer. So we identified 3 that were less than the $1,500 per pound of nitrogen removed. That is the the sort of cutoff threshold that we use for septic sewer projects. And Oak Point Mobile Home Park, although it is more expensive than that $1,500 per pound, they have applied for the $279,000, which is consistent with that $1,500 threshold. So if you funded all of those, there would then be 1.2 million remaining. So the next slide starts with that 1.2 million and looks at treating the ribs and spray fields of package treatment plants. So, we can certainly look, we will need to do a lot more due diligence on these. This is some very, back of the envelope cost estimating. How many acres are those ribs and spray fields? How much would BAM cost to install across that area? We have not reached out to these owners to find out whether they're even willing to work with us. And we haven't looked at the logistics of any site constraints or discharge. We haven't dug into their permits. So all of that due diligence would still need to happen before any of these dollars were spent. But if you wanted to proceed with these, the one thing I wanted to note was Palm Harbor was previously identified in the plan as cost effective for installation of BAM based on the latest numbers pulled from DEP quarterly monitoring and Matt's analysis. They are no longer cost effective, so we would unfund that project and potentially shift those dollars to more cost effective opportunities. So if you did all of that, there's $950,000 left. And then we get into the requests from the community. So we had a number of requests for septic to sewer projects, and so those are listed there. The MICO revision, the project boundaries were changed to take out some areas that were less cost effective and add in some homes that are right there on the waterfront between US 1 and the Lagoon. And so the net change in cost for that project was a reduction of $508,000. We received a little over $1 million in requests for oyster bars and planted shorelines. There's already a budget for oysters in the plan, so this would just be assigning specific locations to those dollars that are already budgeted. You don't need to find additional dollars to make those happen. So that leaves a little over $500,000. Then we get into the stormwater projects. So lots of stormwater proposed in the North Indian River Lagoon. We also had a few projects withdrawn that are at the bottom of the list there, shown as negative numbers. So if you were to do all of those offset by the withdrawals, there would be a little over $300,000 left. Then you get to the Banana River. Again, we have one new project request, 3 small withdrawals, so still a little over $300,000 left. And then we get to the Central Indian River Lagoon, where you have the one large application from Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District. They're also here. If you have questions, they have a presentation to describe that project in more detail if you want. We had a few projects that are completed and were completed under budget in the Central Indian River Lagoon. So those could offset that $1 million. And then in order to balance the budget, these 2 basin projects, 1511 and 2191, those are currently funded projects that are scheduled in years, in the last years of the plan. You would need to unfund those in order to have a balanced budget. So that's just a way that you could continue to fund everything in the plan and allocate funds to the requested projects. For this $203,000 remaining, you could leave that unallocated. When the committee recommended last year to leave $6 million unallocated, the county commission requested that you consider actually allocating all those dollars. So, some other things that you could do to allocate that $200,000. For the math that I just presented, the new clam incentive project, I took that out of oyster dollars that are already budgeted in the plan. If you didn't want to cut into the oyster dollars, you could fund the clams this way. For the leaky lateral repairs, we have $840,000 that was initially budgeted for the pilot program in Satellite Indian Harbor Beach area. You've previously voted to expand that program to all the other smoke testing areas. The county commission would still very much like to see that expanded county-wide. So you could add this 200,000 or, some portion of this 200,000 to that 840,000 to help accommodate that wider distribution for that grant program. Or you could add remaining dollars to the contingency. So just as a summary, leaving the contingency at 5%, but reducing inflation from 3.25% to 2.5%, swapping out oyster bars and planted shorelines and clams for existing living shoreline dollars in the plan, and then adding the $300,000 for oyster gardening, $3.2 million for connecting those 4 package plants to central sewer, $300,000 for potentially looking at adding BAM to ribs and spray fields for a half dozen package plants. And then there were 4 septic sewer projects, all of those stormwater projects in the 3 basins. All of that adds up to just under $475 million. You can discuss what you'd like to do with the remaining balance. I'm sorry, the slide says 2% inflation, but it's really 2.5% inflation down at the bottom. And that's my presentation, Chair.
Thank you, Virginia. That was very well organized. I got a lot of questions here. Dennis.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Going back to the balancing the 2021 plan update slide, I don't know what respond and performance refers to. What is that? Yeah, the 10 million for respond and performance.
We set aside $1 million a year to measure the performance of projects. And so we are monitoring the groundwater in septic to sewer areas, in the leaky lateral areas.
That's fine.
Right.
I thought it was a financial situation. And the second question is, are we double dipping on the contingency? We're taking 5% contingency in the 2020 plan. We've also got 15% contingency, the $62 million on the total revenue projection. Seems as though we're double dipping there.
So that's what's changed between the PowerPoint, the draft PowerPoint that I sent you a week and a half ago and what you've got today. There was concern that if you got rid of inflation and put it all in something called contingency, that the perception might be that it's available to allocate.
Okay.
And so this instead, it's a similar value, 62 million, but it's the same 5% contingency that's been approved in the plan multiple years now, and a reduction in inflation from 3.25% to 2.5%.
So the inflation is only being applied to the expense side?
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
Okay. Courtney.
With regard to the project list, I was wondering, have we funded aquatic vegetation harvesting before?
Yes. That was added a year or two ago, and there's one county project and one, is it Titusville? It's a fairly new category, but it has been previously in the plan.
I just have a terrible memory, so I just wanted to make sure that we were, okay, thank you.
Stephanie.
Yes, Virginia, the 2 projects that you're proposing that we remove, can you give me a little bit more detail on what those are?
Yes, let me go into my backup slides here. So this table, I don't know why the screen behind your heads is cut off at the top, but the ones that, it looks like the TV screens are right. So this is the table E5 from the plan, Exhibit 5 from the back of the plan, that lists the specific stormwater basins in each sub-lagoon. And so the last two on that list, you see the annual cost per pound of TN removed at $170 per pound. So these are the most expensive of the stormwater projects that are currently approved in the central basin of the lagoon in the plan. And so these would be unfunded in order to free up dollars to fund the Melbourne-Tillman project, which has a cost effectiveness of, I think it's $63 per pound.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes perfect sense. I would just say, from a personal perspective, I am very reluctant, given the comments and everything that Todd made, for us to put into the plan right now any funding of the BAM projects. I agree with Vinnie that if we can eliminate the septic and go to, or whatever it's called, the mini septic systems, and go to sewer on those three projects, I am in favor of that. But I would really like to hold off until we had more data about the effectiveness of doing those BAM projects at this point.
Okay, Vinnie?
Thank you. Courtney, do you have something you want to say real quick?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
She jumped at the mic button. I thought she had
I was trying to jump for this.
a profound epiphany. Two things. So, and I'm just trying to make sure that I get the numbers right. So the 2.5% inflation, Virginia, that's per year for 4 years?
Compounded on everything that has not been paid out to date.
Per year for 4 years?
Not just 4 years. So if the project was originally scheduled in year 3 of the plan and hasn't been paid out yet, or completed yet, then that's also compounded out.
Added in, okay. Because I know we had talked before, and Dennis, maybe you were there when we were talking about, and I know Jay was, about our contingency, that we felt 5% was low, especially when it was coming with all the increased costs of construction. And I know the projections, we still have 4 months projected out in this year. And I think if we look at the numbers, they started high, but I think that was a lot of the government, the checks that people were getting and all the money that was still flowing. And then it seems to go downhill drastically. And we have 5.3 million listed as our December number, which is huge. And I'm just not sure if Christmas is going to get that high. So all the numbers we're basing on are based on that. And I know our years subsequently are only at 2%, which is conservative. So if you look at it as a whole, it could even out. I'm just concerned, as you said, Virginia, the worst thing, in my opinion, the worst thing that we can do is have a project that's listed and tell somebody we can't do it. Because I think not only does that stop the project, I think it questions what we've been doing, and it puts a downfall on fixing the lagoon. And so I'm concerned that number might not be high enough. And not only that, but after the 10 years is the last thing, I promise. I know I'm rambling a little bit. But we'll probably still be paying for projects in 11-year, 12-year, 13-year. And so that's additional inflation that probably isn't compounded or added in. So I just am a little bit concerned that we have enough money, that we put it in contingency, whatever the commission wants us to call it. I'll call a duck, a pig, a duck, whatever. But I'm concerned that we don't have enough. And then my last question is on Virginia, on the slide, it said that the clams and I think the there were three things that were going to be swapped with living shoreline projects. And so what we're saying, or what you're saying with that, is that the living shoreline, that was our oyster project. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those three things that you had listed there and use funding that we had talked about for oysters to go into that. So we're less oysters, more various projects. Is that correct?
Right. So most of that $1 million was oysters, swapping oysters for oysters at a undeclared location so far to now we have a specific site and the zoo or MRC or City of Cocoa Beach, have specific sites where they want to place those oysters. A small fraction of that was for planted shorelines, vegetated shorelines that would also filter pollutants before they get to the lagoon, and clams who would also filter the water much like an oyster.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Charlie Venuto.
Yeah, so I think one thing that would be useful, and there was some indication on that new financial chart, is that when we originally set up, we had buckets of money for the major project for education and muck removal, et cetera. And so what I'd would like to see is, where we are at with, since we've got almost the entire budget planned, did we spend, how close did we come to spending the money on education, muck removal, et cetera? Because that should kind of help us decide, what projects to fund. I'm also concerned about, that $6 million that we held back, that's 1% of the budget, all for many of the reasons that Vinnie articulated on, and, it just seems like sound management to me.
Thank you. Courtney?
I was just wondering, for the RIB spray field projects, is the staff thinking about completing these all at the same time? Or is there a way that we could do the most cost-effective ones first and get some data back before we start the other ones to address some of the concerns with the effectiveness of them?
So one of the things that we'll do based on your vote today is we will then look at what is the cash flow in each year and what is the soonest that we can implement projects. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they will be scheduled out. We try to do the most cost-effective ones first, but we also look at which ones can be permitted quicker, which ones can be implemented quicker, because we're trying to get the improvements in the lagoon as soon as possible, too. Mm-hmm. So once we know what projects you want to fund, we will go into that shell game of trying to figure out how to move them and keep a balance between the three different sub-lagoons and the Northern County and Central County, Southern County, Banana River, Indian River, and move projects along as fast as possible. But yes, we could certainly hold back on anything where you wanted more information before we proceeded. We could push those out into out years purposefully to allow more time for data collection and analysis.
Because we could do 195 and 196 prior to the 200 and 201, it looks like, 'cause just from a cost-effective standpoint, and get a presentation on maybe some data before the next round comes down the pipeline, And I'm not sure if we have enough time to do that. Usually you want at least 6 months of data, right? But maybe that's possible.
If we were to monitor the groundwater, we see the change in groundwater in 3 to 6 months. So that data would be available as fairly soon after the implementation of the project.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see any other hands, so I think we've finished all the discussion. At this point, do we move on to the project substitution options, or do we need some sort of motion at this point from the committee?
Chair,
you have public comment?
Yeah.
We haven't voted on anything yet. Are the public comments, are they related to something we're going to vote on, or Is it something we need to get the motion on the floor first and then take the public comments? We've gone through this a couple of times before, and it seems like that we've been told we're supposed to have the motion on the floor first. I thought you're supposed to have the public comments before the motion. I'm willing to go with the pleasure of all my experts on Robert's Rules of Order in this committee.
I think you could take a motion in a second and then get public comment, or you could get public comment prior to any motion. So it's up to the chair.
Okay, if it's up to me, according to the vice chair, let's have public comment. So there's nobody on the attendee list that has their hands up now, but I understand there are people in the audience that I can't see. So how many people do we have in the audience who want to speak on this issue?
I believe 2.
2, okay. And so can you introduce who it is, or they introduce themselves or something, because I don't know who they are.
Yeah, Rodney Honeycutt is the engineer of record for the Oak Point plant, package plant.
Thank you.
The green light's on. Is it working? Sounds like it. Yeah.
I think you're on.
Good morning, Rodney Honeycutt, Honeycutt and Associates, 3700 South Washington Avenue in Titusville. I'm here to talk about Oak Point Mobile Home Park. First, a little background. The mobile home park is 50 years old, so that means the collection system, which the pipe is constructed of paper. That's probably a half an inch thick, so you can imagine that's old. The treatment plant is concrete, but 50 years old is pretty much the life of anything. As you could see from the photograph, the park ends up on the river. It fronts on US 1 on the west end, and it's probably 400 or 500 feet down to the river, and there's a lot of falls, so everything just naturally goes toward the river, so that made sense that the treatment plant was down there 50 years ago. And so I think it was around a year ago, they had a violation. They actually had a breach in that rib, and so there was some effluent that went into the river. Also, the treatment plant was not treating well at that time, and there was a couple of safety issues on the top with some handrails. The problem with the 50-year-old facility is that there's infiltration and inflow. The manholes that were constructed at that time were just ground level with a piece of wood laying over the top. So when it rains, they go in. The park manager, who is here, has done an excellent job with what he could. He's tried to raise the manholes and put a better lid on them, and it's helped some over time. The treatment plant operator and the park manager have worked to make this treatment plant work. I mean, they've got spare parts, they've got blowers that work, they've got pumps, they always have a spare. But back in those days, there wasn't redundancy built in, so you just have to take care of things when they happen. And so what's happened, the owner is a widow who inherited the park. She's very nervous. They hired me to investigate. It was obvious that the biggest problem they have is when it rains, and that's what happened before. It was during a storm that flooded them out, and so their collection system needs to be replaced. So we have designed a replacement. We have it permitted with DEP. We have selected a contractor, and we're at the stage that they're locating the existing utilities that are underground. You can imagine 50 years, they've got cable, they've got AT&T, they've got water, all this stuff we've got to try to locate so we can make sure we tie everything together without destroying everything else in the process. And so, and locate all the laterals under the trailers. And so we're close to construction on that. She is going to be spending between $300,000 and $400,000 to do this. Obviously, I've told her that treatment plant is an issue. We've got to do something. She's nervous about how can she do it, how can she finance it. So I've tried to help her by applying for grants everywhere that we can, and we're very anxious. We're very fortunate in one aspect that there is an existing force main in US 1. It's a good ways outside the city of Titusville, but there was a project there that there was a force main extended. So we can put a lift station in, duplex pumps. I propose a generator, standby generator, so we don't have any issues. We're so close to the river, and a force main to tie into the existing force main. And so we're here today asking for help to get that lift station and standby power force main to tie into the city. The city knows that we're doing this, and they have sewer available. They provide a letter, and we included that in our application to show that we can do this project. And so we're asking for help, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
Yeah, Mr. Honeycutt, would you hold on a second? Vinnie, you have your hand up. Do you have a question for Mr. Honeycutt or something else?
Yeah, no, it was for Mr. Honeycutt. I just want to thank you and the owner for coming here. I mean, it's huge. It's stepping forward, saying there's a problem and we want to fix it. So I just wanted to thank you for doing that, and thank her for thinking about the community and the environment. So thank you for that.
Thank
you. Okay, Courtney?
I just wanted to echo that, and just for the community, so people who are watching understand, this will be converting 108 mobile home park residents to sewer, which is exactly what this tax has been for. So, kudos to the owner, and great job to you in designing a good system. This is exactly what we want more people in the community to do, is bring projects like this forward. So 108 people are now going to be off a package plant situation that was clearly failing, and onto sewer. So great job to you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any other comments for Mr. Honeycutt. Do we have another speaker in the audience?
Yeah, Mike Karadopoulos is here to represent Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District for the vegetative harvesting proposal.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for making the time for me this morning. I represent Melbourne-Tillman, and as was pointed out very well by Virginia and her team, ours is maybe the most cost-effective of all the programs, looking at $61 per pound. And we just wanted to come forth. We've already met with Virginia and her excellent team. Terry's been fantastic in just helping us accumulate these numbers. But you see the mass, over 16,000 pounds, low cost. And this is preventing these nutrients from making it to the waterways. So we just wanted to come by in person, make sure that we were always available to answer questions you all might have. But we think this is the best use of taxpayer dollars, and especially given the difficulties you're running into with the coronavirus, et cetera, what better way to get the most bang for the taxpayers in the process. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I just want to make sure we were here to do that and be in partnership with you so that these nutrients never make their way to the lagoon system in general. Any questions y'all might have?
Thank you. I don't see any. Hold on the question. Courtney?
Do this, or do you have your own physical infrastructure to do that?
We will be using our equipment, even purchasing some additional equipment. Of course, we only get paid for reimbursement, so we have to do the work. We're at risk, so to speak, if we buy the equipment or hire additional staff to do this. We thought it'd be most cost effective as we looked at private versus our internal organization at this point. We sounded that by having internal, it would be the best way to do it because we have some of this equipment already, and we just wanted to figure out the best way after having a great discussion with Virginia and her team on how to do this and do it in the most cost-effective manner. We found that would be the best way to do it.
I think that is too, because I think, instead of using chemical herbicides, which is something that the community sees as spraying,
Exactly.
we have to do something. But for you all to get the equipment to start mechanically removing this stuff, is a great example of what we should all be trying to do. So, great job on that. And you do win the pounds per nitrogen removed, hands down, 16,000 pounds. So thank you for bringing
Thank
this
you very
project
much. And they
forward.
worked really hard. They started, as you know, as a flood control district because of the difficulties in the waterway there to go in another direction. But our goal is to not just remove that vegetation, but reduce that chemical spray,
Right.
which is so important
Yeah.
to the lagoon system.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Lorraine Cost?
Yeah, so, okay, so this is, this includes the initial harvesting, and then what is the maintenance? So have you
Yeah,
looked at that?
we want to, long-term, we think that this is something that we should continue to do. This is something we want to have an ongoing discussion with the committee and see how we do this long-term, because we'll do it, of course, for a year and a half, or how long this project might last. And then we want to most likely come back to you and get your opinion on how we should proceed in the future. We believe in results. We want to provide those results, show that the numbers worked out as we anticipated, so we come back to you and maybe there might be additional funding requests, because I think our goal, as you all pointed out already today, is how do we get the most bang for the buck? And what's costing $60, $61 versus, in some cases, thousands of dollars per pound, we're trying to help. So I think that might be a discussion for future years to see if this is a continuing program, but we want to work within the confines that have been allocated. I know Virginia and I have had this discussion already in some of our early meetings before we be presented before the board.
Thank you.
Okay, Vinnie Taranto.
Why'd you have to put my last name in there? Am I in trouble? John. Real quick, and I know, Mike, it's for you and Virginia. So, Virginia, the county didn't we buy that big transformer machine that's mechanically goes in to the lagoon? Remember we had the presentation on it, and you would never want to be in a pool with it? It's basically the bottom line. And so, Mike, are you guys are you going to buy the same equipment? Do you know? Or Virginia, have you guys reached out? I know we talked about...
Can't recall exactly how many years ago, but we had a working group with the Melbourne-Tillman and the St. Johns River Water Management District. We met for years on how to pump more of the water from that system west to the St. Johns River, reduce both the freshwater inflows that didn't belong in the lagoon and all the nutrients in those flows into the lagoon. And so during those meetings and discussion, there was also a lot on the aquatic weeds that grow in the canal system. Do a number of things. They slow the flow and increase the risk of flooding. And so it's really imperative that the Melbourne-Tillman Control District keep those weeds under control. And they had historically been doing what everybody was doing, using herbicides to make that happen. And so it was suggested that maybe a harvester would work. And so we all worked together. The Water Management District actually purchased a harvester for Melbourne-Tillman to use. It's a larger harvester than the one that the county subsequently bought after those same conversations. And so their equipment, their harvester is used in their larger canal systems. What they're asking for now is funding that would allow them to purchase different equipment that would work in their smaller canal systems, so that they can really reduce the herbicide use in nearly all of their canals.
Okay, that's great. And then I know, because I know the county talked about it, and Mike, I don't know if there's a possibility, but I don't know how many days a year those harvesters run. But if there was opportunities to work with other municipalities or other, water districts for the day the harvester isn't working, like if another municipality could rent it or another homeowners, association could rent it, just trying to figure out, again, as you said, spending the what we can to make sure we're getting the biggest return.
Well, I think Virginia put it perfectly there, and we have 163 miles of canals, so it's an ongoing daily process, and we'll be purchasing these at our risk, so to speak, and knowing that we might be reimbursed based on our good work. So we think that it's a good long-term play, and we've already had some discussions in our initial meetings about how to maximize what you all have, as a county, or we have a county, and what we have, of course, is at Melbourne-Tillman as well. So it's how to maximize the dollars spent and the equipment we have, and of course the ongoing maintenance costs, etc. And this is how we came up with this plan. We thought this would be the best way to get the nutrients out of the waterways and reduces, Courtney brought up so well, the chemical spraying to make it a win-win, because you're doing all this good work cleaning up the lagoon. We'd hate to see an outside source, that being the canals, ruin your good work. And I think this is the right balance we're trying to strike. And this $1 million plus, roughly, that we'll get over the next year and a half, I think will really reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus and do it at a cost that is really strong. So if we think long-term this is a good play to do, you all might come back and fund it in future years. Thank you.
Okay, one more question, Dennis Field.
Thank you. Mike, this really doesn't have anything to do with Melbourne Tillman specifically. Sure. But from the scientific side of it, and I just don't know the answer to this question, if we take out the 6,900,000 pounds of vegetation, does that allow for a period of time till that vegetation grows back up? Does that allow the nitrogen and phosphorus to flow straight into the river and not get captured?
I think the best way to put it, it's an ongoing process, clearly. And we have our main responsibility, paid for by other tax dollars, is to make sure that those don't get clogged so you don't have flooding. So we're trying to strike that balance. And I think that's why we work so closely with Virginia and her team to strike that balance, and that's what this plan represents.
Okay, yeah. I knew it had to be a balance of some sort.
Sure.
Okay, I think we're finished with questions from, Terry Casto.
Just a quick question. I was trying to understand the note. We've got a million 1011 in the plan, but a note says it looks like, I guess, an increased amount of weight over 2 years would be eligible for 1829. So I'm just trying to figure this out here. We've got a forecast based on a year's worth of reduction, and like next year you'd be asking for an earned supplement because you took out more additional weight.
Terry, that one has to do with their nutrient removal. They were eligible for the $1.8 million. But their total project cost was the $1.011 million. So that's why they are requesting the 1.011, but are eligible for up to 1.8. Does that make sense?
Let me just add, if you look at the two
Yes,
rows.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, the two rows beneath there that are also harvesting, you see the eligible cost per pound is 110.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were to request that full $110 per pound, they would be eligible to receive 1.8 million, but they are only requesting 1,011,976.
Mm-hmm. Also, this one is a little bit different because the growing cycle for this project is like 1.19 years, and it will take them about 2 years to get everything done so it's not an annual basis like the other projects.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're finished with the comments from the committee and the comments from the public in the chamber. I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Haradopoulos. It's very, very kind of you to come out. There's nobody on the attendees list with their hands up on this item. I will mention that on the harvester, last year when I went to the county commission and urged them to let us have a contingency budget, I used as an example a mechanical harvester for the Melbourne Tillman Water Control District. And this year, they've come forward with that request, and I'm glad we had the money there to be able to help support them. So I'll just leave it there. I still don't see anybody with their hands up, the attendees, but I see Stephanie's got her hand up, and let's see what she has to say, Stephanie.
I would like to move to accept the proposal that Virginia presented to us for making changes to the Indian River Lagoon project plan, with the exception of holding off on the RIB projects, funding one of the least costly RIB projects as a model for future, to look at the outcome of that. But other than that, accepting everything that she proposed.
I'll second.
And I'll need a second on that if we're going to discuss it.
I'll second Courtney.
Courtney seconds it? Okay. Discussion.
Can I don't know, I didn't click the hands
Let
up.
me ask first before anybody else jumps in there. Is there a way that we can encumber the funds for the projects that aren't funded early on and leave them in, and still have it identified in the plan that if the early projects work out well, we'll move on with the others? And I think that was kind of the discussion we were having a little bit earlier that Courtney was talking about. And I see Courtney, Terry, and Vinnie all have their hands up, but Terry was first, so let's go with Terry first.
Yeah, I was just going to add detail to her motion, which is I think she's specifically recommending accepting the plan to include projects through 194 and 198, which looks like the lowest cost pilot RIB project, and then holding the others 195, 96, 97, and 199 through 202, per John's suggestion, holding them in abeyance.
Hey, does the original motion maker, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that, yes.
Okay, and then the seconder, I assume you're okay with that? Courtney, I can't hear you.
To be easier, I think it'd be easier, to be honest, if we just funded all of it and just gave staff the direction to just do number 195 first and hold off doing the others until we get presented. And if we don't like the result, we can just reallocate the money. Otherwise, we're going to have the money just sitting there. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, and Stephanie, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
I'm okay with having the money just sitting because we really don't know where we're going. And I don't have a problem with that. So I understand both ways. I can understand either perspective, but I don't have a problem with having the money just waiting to see what happens and then allocating it potentially next year.
Okay, so there's definitely two different points of view there. So let's go down to Terry. You already talked. Courtney, you already talked. Vinnie.
Yeah, I was just going to offer an amendment that instead of the cheapest one, although Stephanie, I agree with you, maybe one of the cheapest ones. Just I wanted to make sure we picked one that the county felt that they could get in and monitor monitor for the cheapest amount. You know, I agree. I think we need to check this just like we did with the smoke testing, just to make sure. So I just didn't want to constrain them too tightly with the cheapest one if they felt like the one that's close to it would be a better fit. And then secondly, there was still $200,000 unallocated. So that was part of the discussion too. So I was going to suggest that we put that into the contingency and inflation. I was going to suggest that as an amendment, but also throwing it out there for discussion because that could be spent other ways as well.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, but so we could amend the motion to include completing 195 or 196, holding the projects 200 and 201. We will be holding off on those and putting that funding into contingency as well as the 200. And I can amend my motion to say that as well. Does that sound okay?
And I'm agreeable to that as the original maker of the motion.
Let's move on then with Charlie.
Yeah, okay, just a little clarification. I believe there's 5 RIB spray seal projects. And I support what Stephanie was saying, let's start with one. I don't know if there's any one of those 5 that will be representative of all of them, because I know there's going to be some differences based on location and the existing geology. But if we could find one that, we could perhaps use as a ideas, but basically I support Stephanie's with the, going with one and holding off on the other four.
And when you suggest we should find a model candidate, that's staff, right?
I think that would be appropriate, correct?
Yeah, okay, thank you. David Lane. David, are you there?
All right. I support the motion as it's documented right now. I was going to add that if there's any unallocated funds, it's probably fair to expect that the commission will come back to us at a later date suggesting what we do with the funds. So it'd be nice to have their buy-in early rather than, being reactive to it. So I like the idea of committing those funds because experience has taught us what happens when we don't.
Okay. Vinnie?
Just two things. No, I'm off. So I agree, and I'd be okay with committing it and then uncommitting it. I just kind of I think that we should always vote on what we feel is best, and if another body comes to us and asks us to do something, we can do that. That's not a problem. But I've always been in the feeling that you should vote your conscience. And so if we feel something and we get asked to do something, then we can do it. But and then also, Virginia, I'd like your opinion too on the whole choose a model, Bamfield or staff, just to make sure that we're kind of going in the right direction and that you feel that could happen. I don't want to pass it and then you guys go like, well, we can't really do that. So yeah, so I'd like to get your opinion or staff's opinion, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Oh, please, Vinnie.
So I'm not familiar enough with those 5 sites to know which would be the most representative for a good pilot study to measure the performance, but we can dig into that in the next 2 months, right? We'll bring back a plan in January, and if I understand the motion, we will budget for the one that we think has the best prospect.
So just so we can make sure, now that I think we need to change it again. So we're going to be voting for the plan presented by staff, but with the exception of the RIB Sprayfield package plant projects, where we are going to ask staff to come up with the best model project, bring that back to us, and the remaining funds that were requested for those projects will go into the contingency fund, as well as the additional $200,000 that were left over. Okay.
Okay. And Stephanie, you're in agreement?
Perfect agreement, yes.
Okay. Now I got some more hands up. Let's go with Dennis.
Yeah, I just want to be clear for what you just said, Courtney. You said I thought we were talking about the 5 RIB plants or 5 RIB projects, but you threw in the word package plants also. Well, but we've got package plant connections to sewer. We got 3 of those. Are you talking about those lumped into that? That's my clarification. Okay. And Mr. Chair, I think Vinnie made an amendment to the motion. Just put on my Robert's Rules hat. That was a long time ago, Vinnie. I don't know if it was seconded or not.
I think I was offering suggestions. I don't know. I don't know. I'm taking off every hat I have. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. And so I still got Dennis. Let's see, Terry.
Yeah, I can't make a motion, but I'd make a recommendation that we separate the inflation number from the contingency number. They're influenced by different factors. And and I think we're just losing track of, I think we're losing track if we lump all that together.
Okay.
May I address that?
And I'm not sure that in the plan update, I'm not sure that Virginia is suggesting that those numbers be lumped together. That was for the presentation today. Maybe she wants to comment on that. I don't know.
I would
Yep,
like to
she's got her
comment
hand up.
on that. So in the plan, we have very specific language that's been approved by the committee and approved by the county commission in a couple iterations
Yeah.
now on how we use contingency funds. There are no words, there are no procedures for how anybody accesses the inflation funds. So what I would like to do is, we can report the numbers separately if that's what is preferred, but I would like the process that we have for contingency to apply to inflation. So when a community partner has a project that is the cost goes up due to inflation and they need more dollars to make that happen, they are currently coming and applying for contingency funds because that's the only process that we have. The reality is that they are requesting inflation funds. So I just want to, if the committee agrees with that, we would amend that language so that it clearly is that process applies to both pots of money.
Okay. All right. I don't see any other hands up. We have a motion and a second. Is that correct? Everybody okay on that? All right. Can I get and I don't see anybody in the public who raised their hand for comment, so we'll close the public comment on this. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so it appears to be unanimous. All right, that gets us down to old business, none, new business, 2021 project funding recommendation for the 2021 plan. Is that not what we've just done? Okay, and so the 2021 meeting calendar.
I make a motion that we accept the 2021 meeting calendar as presented in the agenda, which is everything except for every month except for June.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Appears to be unanimous, okay? So we're down to general public comments. This is the opportunity for anybody in the public to make a comment. And I haven't seen any hands up there from the attendee list for a while, so I assume that there's no public comment. We're going to have final comment by committee and chair in just a second. I've got one hand up someplace. Dennis.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I think all of our terms expire here shortly. When is that?
They expire after the February meeting.
Okay.
The League of Cities, for the 7 members who are in seats appointed by the League of Cities, they met and their motion was to approve reappointing all 7. I'm going to write that up for the county commission to confirm and ask the county commission about their seats. Do they want to extend the terms of everyone, all of their 7 folks who want to be extended? We have 2 members stepping down that are both in board-appointed seats, Jay Moynihan and I'm blanking. Who's the other one?
Lesnar.
Oh, yes, Johnny Lesnar. And so we will definitely be advertising. Well, the board will have the option of advertising or filling if the vacancy is a member seat and there is an alternate in place, right, then they could move the alternate to the vacant seat, or they could direct us to advertise, and then after they advertise, they could again consider moving the alternate up or appointing someone new. So if they move someone up, right, then that then vacates a League of Cities seat, and we'll have to circle back with the League of Cities. So this is what seemed like a very simple process is a very cumbersome process. But
Virginia, which categories were those? Can you remind me? The J's? Real estate?
Johnny Lesnar is the member for technology, and Jay Moynihan is the member for real estate.
Okay.
So Vinnie and Dennis could be considered for promotion.
Okay, and Vinnie has his hand up, so maybe he'd like to make a comment.
I was just gonna say, and this is not sour grapes at all, because I serve. I'm just honored to be able to do what I do and serve. But I know we talked before about how we could get. I think Terry brought it up, and Dr. Windsor, you did too, about how we could let the commission know that there are alternates that are willing and ready to serve. And so one of the concepts that I thought is, and I don't know, maybe we can talk about it, is that the committee could send a letter to the county commission. Us could send a letter to the county commission saying, we're aware this seat is available. These alternates have served, for the past number of years or whatever, and we would ask that to continue institutional knowledge and what we've been talking about. We would ask that you promote these to voting members. And again, it's not, we have no say over it. It's the county commission. But that might be a nice way of just letting them know that it is important that we continue the work that we've done. And the best way to do that is to keep the people that we have on the board.
So is that a
Thank you, Vinnie.
motion?
Does Vinnie
Are you
suggest
making that a
anybody?
motion?
I'll move that we send a letter making that exact recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, and who's the we that's sending the letter? Are you asking staff to write a letter on our behalf, or what?
Yes, I'm asking staff to draft a letter on our behalf. Thank you.
Okay. Virginia, do you have any problems with that?
No, we can draft the letter. Do you want the chair to sign the
Yes.
letter? So I'll work with Dr. Windsor on that letter.
Okay. All right. No other comments there. I'm closing the general public comment because we didn't have anybody.
Do we need
raise
to
their hand
vote
there.
on that motion?
Dr. Windsor, we need to
Okay.
vote on the motion.
We need to vote on the motion.
Okay. I'm getting some echoing here, so you guys bear with me a bit. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're on to final comments by chair and committee members. Any final comments? Raise your hand. I don't see any final comments. We're pushing right on 3 hours and not having to extend the meeting any farther. Thank you very much to those 5 folks who made their way to the commission chambers today and the staff. I hope by our January meeting that some of us may be able to get vaccinated and be able to withstand going out in public. David, you've got your hand up.
I just wanted to say that I thought in light of all of the challenges we had today, you did an outstanding job. You're a great field general, so thank you.
Thanks, David. Laura Lee, hands up.
I just wanted to say how pleased I am to see the progress that we seem to be making in mechanical vegetation removal instead of spewing herbicides everywhere, all over everything. It's what we've been doing to our waterways for years with spraying the herbicides. It's horrific, and I'm really, really glad to see us moving in this direction. I'd like to see the Brevard County Parks and Recreation start using more of vegetation removal rather than spraying herbicides around the stormwater parks and ponds in our park. Thank you.
Okay, Lorraine Cos?
Yeah, and well, I'm affirming that as well, that it certainly does make a difference. In our municipalities where we have a lot of ponds, they're becoming just algae crusted, and it's hard to get things to shift in that direction. So this is good that we're funding these projects as a new way to go.
Okay, Vinnie Taranto.
I know, I'm sorry. I even cringed pushing the button. I just wanted to thank Logan and
No, you didn't.
I just wanted to thank Logan and the tech staff here, because seriously, to do an in-person and a Zoom without feedback flying around, that's huge. And it's just a spaghetti puzzle of how you get it to work. So I just wanted to thank the county and everyone who came together. This isn't easy, but we do it. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to shut the meeting down with thanks to you all, and I hope you all have a nice holiday season. See you all in January.
Goodbye.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.